Okay, let's now continue. In the first video, I have summarized the three main issues that will be discussed in my keynote. And I also outlined the three parts of my presentations. In the second video, I discuss the main issues and challenges regarding the new competitors to the educators and education institutions. And now, this will be a continuation of those two parts. I will then also discuss problems and challenges regarding the inequality, the digital technology gaps, and also the virtual education and virtual communication gaps. And later, after this about 30 minutes presentation, we'll have a question and answer. After that, we'll continue with the last part, the third part, that will discuss the possible solutions regarding the need to have tacit knowledge instead of explicit knowledge. And we also will explore a little bit about the pentahelix new paradigm for education and the need for having a transdisciplinary type of curricula. Now, before we continue, I, of course, would want to acknowledge the sponsor and the supporter of this important conference, that is the ERASMUS Plus program of the European Union. Also, the involvement of the Wismar University of Germany, who have been given a lot of support and coordinating this conference. In addition, I also would like to give credit and acknowledge the inputs that I have been able to discuss and explore further from the various colleagues of mine, my network friends that I've met in many countries during international conferences in the last 10 years at least, as listed here, the places where we had meetings in South Africa, Namibia, China, Norway, Romania, Italy, Poland, Slovenia, etc. And also in public lectures in the last 5-6 years in many universities in Germany, in USA, and Philippines, Thailand, Zimbabwe, Indonesia, etc., involving more than 30-40 universities. I also would like to inform you that you do need to worry and to take notes of all this presentation that I'm making, because the PowerPoint package, the PowerPoint slides that I will show you here, there are about 50 slides, will be available right now in Dropbox. And here is the link to that Dropbox location. And please make a photograph so that you can later get this PowerPoint presentation and slides. In addition, of course, you can contact me if you need further information. My contact address and contact information is also provided in this present slide. I also would like to inform you that nowadays the new method of education is basically you need to do a lot of the searching and fact-checking yourself. So please get ready with your devices, mobile or laptop or tablet. And if you hear something that is new or that is not quite understandable from my presentation, just fact check it, just search it in the internet and Google it, so that you have better and more detailed information right away in front of you. Because I cannot go through detail in all the 40 or 50 slides today, And the reason is just to inform you that those information are all there in the PowerPoint presentation, which you can review at your own convenience later on, and follow it up with further search, further fact-checking in the internet, or discussing it with your peers or your friends, and of course educators, your professors probably, or colleagues, so that you have a better understanding of the concept that I have been describing in this PowerPoint presentation. So again, proactive initiative from you in fact-checking, in following up all the information and all the terminology that I mentioned in this presentation is your responsibility. Now, let's talk about the second part. In this PowerPoint presentation, there'll be 50 slides, more or less, and I cannot go into detail in explaining everything. So what I do is to basically provide an agenda setting for you to think about all these issues that I mentioned. You will need to investigate yourself, analyze it yourself, and find the solution that is most relevant, most suitable for your own needs, for your own cultural context. And of course, discuss it with your own constituent, your own friends, your own network, as to what would be the most realistic and most doable and most manageable solution to the problem that we mentioned today. All right. As I mentioned previously also, in the second part of my presentation, we will talk about the problem and challenges about inequality in digital competencies and virtual technology gaps. What do we mean with that? Well, I'm going to talk about these problems for three different segments or three different groups. One is for the learners themselves, the second is for the educators, and the third is for the education institution itself, because there are some problems about management, financing, and things that we need to be considering as well. Now, let's start with the problems and challenges for learners. Once we have the problems and identify the possible solution, we need to develop or think about strategies. The best way to develop strategy is to figure out what is the most strategic way, the most efficient and cost-effective way of solving the problem. And therefore, I suggest we use a concept of guerrilla strategies, using as little resources for as much impact or as much results as possible. And basically trying to do something out of the box, something that's innovative, something that is unusual. And that's why we call it guerrilla strategy, from guerrilla warfare, from guerrilla type of initiative, where we can get as much results as possible with as little resources, time, effort, and energy. So, what are the problems? We have mentioned earlier in the presentation, I don't want to go again to the details, but here you can find the details, that there are many structural problems in many countries and communities regarding remote and virtual blended learning approaches. Many people do not have the coverage or the internet connectivity. Again, devices, communication and educational technology devices may not be accessible to some people because of economic reasons and many other constraints. Also, there's a problem with the skills and mastery of the virtual communication technology utilization, and mastery by other support system. What do I mean with support system? If people now are learning by themselves in their own location, they need to get support, not only from the teachers or from the professors, but also from other peer groups, from maybe their parents if they are young, maybe from other community of practices, because nowadays with the internet connectivity, you can always find virtual communication groups where you can discuss many problems in very, very useful settings. Again, it has mentioned in the previous video that there is a problem with many educators who are not ready or prepared for the transformation to conduct virtual blended learning. This may be due to mental barriers, inadequate support, and the lack of the growth mindset. People are not willing to try out new things, not very flexible, not having enough confidence to tinker or to try out new approaches and to unlearn many of the things that they have been accustomed to doing. There is also inadequate state-of-the-art workshops or training or presentation about what the communication technology and new education tools can do to lessen their burdens. It's not an extra burden. As a matter of fact, it may be less work for them if they know exactly how to utilize the technology properly. Another thing is I mentioned earlier already about the problem of management of the training institution or educational institution themselves because of the new modality of learning these days, especially if more and more education will be done remotely or through virtual learning methods. And therefore, strategic alliances and management partnership regarding tacit knowledge acquisition and sharing will need to be done with relevant partners, either in the business or industry sector. We also will need to mitigate the poor virtual communication infrastructure. We mentioned already about not being able to reach as many people in different locations. Maybe we can learn from the old, or we now call it conventional media, and that is the kind of approaches that have been used about 30, 40, 50 years ago. I started this kind of career in the early 70s through all the way to the end of 1990s. And during those early days, we are using low-cost mass media to reach people who are otherwise not reachable through conventional education or communication tools. And these are examples of what have been done around the world. For instance, in Mexico and Central South America, we have telesecundaria, that's television and radio program for educating people in the rural areas, as well as in the areas where not enough school can reach the population. In Nicaragua, we have radio mathematics. In America, of course, we all know about the Sesame Street and Electric Company television program for children. And in India and Indonesia, there are this rural radio television listenership forum in many places, remote places out of the big cities. Also, we can use a narrowcasting approach instead of broadcasting in order to reach specific target groups, a specific group of learners with specific contents and specific needs that will need to be packaged in a segmented way to this target audiences. And we can use folk media, pop culture, social community networks, and other credible traditional opinion leaders as influencers, as we are doing also nowadays. And also the self-instructional or self-learning packages using exploratory and experiential learning method that many of us have been accustomed to. For instance, in the peer-based learning and using simulation, role play, and education game. The challenge is how to transform it into remote and virtual communication or educational packages or tools that will be useful to our learners. In order to improve our educational method to reach specific target group, especially now the majority will be of the FANG generation. Do you all know what FANG is? That is the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google generation. And they have different communication education habits. They learn different than the previous generation. And therefore, we need to understand their mobile and visual learning preferences, their crowdsourcing and fact-checking initiative, and they do multitasking and collaborative learning, which is very useful. And also, most of them nowadays prefer asynchronous and on-demand learning methods. So we need to understand, in order for us to be able to reach them and prepare the specific and appropriate learning packages and learning models based on the curriculum that we want to provide them in an effective manner. Also, we need to understand the implication and democratization of information and knowledge. Nowadays, people are both the consumer as well as producer or generator of information knowledge. The question is how valid the information is, how truthful the information is, and that's the main issue that we need to be worried about. And of course, we have been doing also in the past participatory, collaborative, experiential learning globally, but now, of course, with the remote learning technologies, this will become more and more important, and therefore, we need to empower our learners for a proactive discovery procedure or process for acquiring and sharing and applying both explicit and tacit knowledge. Now, for the educators, what can we usefully learn from the new educational enterprises? With enterprises, I was talking about the edupreneurs, those people who have been successfully developing startups or educational businesses that have proven to be effective in terms of learning impact as well as financial viability. So first of all, we need to spy successful competitors, successful edupreneurs, in order to understand why are they so successful and what kind of communication platform, communication strategies and methods have they utilized in their educational programs. So one important aspect of that is the way they acquire their clients in the context of education, of what the learners or the students. How do they get them? How do they get them to come back again and get addicted to the kind of programs that the educational institutions are offering? Are they using artificial intelligence-based algorithm in part of their machine learning or deep learning? Are they using something that is called addictive gaming application algorithm and techniques, which I will discuss in the next couple of slides. So we need to understand this in order for us also to be able to develop our own learning strategies, learning approaches, processes, and methods successfully, like some other competitors who have been doing this and being able to survive and prosper. So their business models will need to be also understood. For instance, we know that there are successful uh, education initiatives, especially in the MOOC type of approaches, uh, massive online open courses, institutions such as Coursera of Stanford, Khan Academy, edX of Harvard and MIT, Udemy, and others. Also, there are companies that's making a lot of money and are even now uh, part of the capital market, traded in Wall Street. And many investors are pouring in money, like Czech Learning, New Oriental Education, an educational institution in China. So again, these are public companies that is being traded in the stock market. We need to assess also the success stories of corporate universities. Why are they so successful? One of the reasons is because they are the provider of tacit knowledge, knowledge based on practical experience, based on insights, first-hand information and knowledge from people who are implementing and involved in many of the business enterprises. And in the USA, for instance, we have our corporate universities like Oracle University, Apple University, McDonald's, Hamburger University, Disney University, Caterpillar. Also in other parts of the world, in France, we have, in Indonesia, we have Allianz Indonesia University that offers anything about insurance, know-how, Tata University in India, and Toyota University, etc. Now, how do we then learn from this corporate university in order to get the resources, especially the resource person who have a lot of practical experiences, first-hand knowledge about how certain industries and businesses are being implemented effectively. One way is to leverage the university status and prestige and try to get those people to become regular staff members of the learning institution, to have regular learning activities such as Edupreneurs Master Clinics and Innovation Incubation Center involvement, Communipreneurs Coaching and Mentoring Program, etc., as I provided some of the examples here. Also, another important steps that is needed before we do anything else is that there is a need to provide revisioning for public and for the clientele of education institution about the changing market needs or occupational needs regarding the type of competency that is needed, say, in the next 5 or 7 years. There are a lot of conflicts between students and their parents, because the parents always have the perception that the children should have safe occupation, safe career, like being a doctor, engineer, a banker, etc., which may be part of a sunset industry type of competency that will be needed in about 4 or 5 years. Whereas the children, the younger generation, have been exposed to the new ways of doing things, new type of businesses, the new type of disruptive type of business activities, and they have a different perception about what is needed in terms of their career, in terms of their competencies to succeed in 5 or 7 years. And I have seen many activities, including fee-based counseling services for parents and children regarding the conflict that they have about careers. Now, finally, I want to talk about an important development in the field of providing some incentive rewards to people so that they can become repeat customer, repeat client, people who come back again for more. And this is what we call the client acquisition strategies or methods. Now, there are many disruptors, companies that is basically now using what we call the concept of subscription method or sharing economy method, whereby you sort of provide not only motivation, but incentive for them to be addicted to your program. And therefore now, we not only know about obesity of your body, but infobesity. And that is the internet addiction disorder. And what are the substance for being addicted? That is what we call dopamine effects. And I do not want to go into the detail, but give you some of the literature and some of the development of this field. And you need to investigate and review the materials by yourself. Try to get more information from the internet. I'm giving you the tech words and some of the examples of what it is. So again, addiction to devices or computer application, computer programs, so that people are not bored. Like in education, one of the biggest problems is dropouts, and people are not doing enough time in order to learn or read the learning materials. Their attention span is limited. But remember, 5-10 years ago, our phone, right? Our phone here, let's see here. We only check our phone when there is a phone call, when there is a ringing tone. That's when we open our phone. But over the years, I now, for instance, keep on checking my phone every 5 minutes, opening it every 5 or 10 minutes, and searching for messages, information, whether or not there's a ring or there's a notification that I have new messages. I want to see and get more information, although there's no indication that I have the new messages. I'm addicted to my devices and the application and the programs in that device, and that is what they call internet addiction disorder. And that's why we have infobesity. So it says that the technology industry greatest invention is mind control, and they produce dopamine so that we keep on coming back for more. And that's why they have a lot of subscribers. For instance, Facebook and Instagram and many other social media have billions of people subscribing and coming back for more to their platform. And the question is, can this be positively or negatively being applied for educational strategies learning methods, learning processes in order to make our learning more effective. Now, my simple question is, in this age of disruption, post-truth, and internet of everything, including internet addiction disorder or illness, including also the infobesity, how many universities have incorporated captology in their curriculum? Anybody knows or heard of captology? Some may not. But if you have heard, how will captology be applied to affect positive or negative behavior or useful or harmful enterprise, especially in education, especially again in a super smart society 5.0 era that the Japanese have been advocating in the last couple of years. So what is captology? Captology is the science of understanding how computers, mainly their applications and their programs, manipulate people. So the Mahaguru is Professor B.J. Fogg from my ex-alma mater, Stanford University, where he has the very famous persuasive technology laboratory, where he did a lot. He has been doing a lot of research and having a lot of publication regarding persuasive technology, which you may want to search and study for yourself later on. Here are more information about persuasive technology for you to review and to search the material. Here again is the diagram for cognitive cybernetics, where we can see on one hand the computer devices type of technology and the persuasive psychological impact that you want to get as outcome: behavioral change, attitude change, motivation, etc. And the interface of this is called the science of captology. So finally, I will want to also mention about the need for creative communication financing or education financing. And we need to be thinking of not only government support, but also public goods and services and community investment in developing the infrastructure and facilities needed to help our citizens and society in getting better information and communication technology infrastructure to use for education. And this is, for instance, some of the financing model that's been used in America through the public broadcasting service, the Grameen phone of Bangladesh, and also the phone internet kiosk business model. Basically, this is all private initiative, private sector initiative. Also the crowdfunding initiative by local community organization, and trying to encourage lobbying and legislation using Robin Hood financing policies, and basically to create cross-subsidy financial support by providing preferential pricing for students and low-income netizens through telecom service providers, and also to have better and more fair fiscal and incentive policies for telecommunication industry sector to invest more in high-speed and broadband technology and infrastructure in remote area. And here is the newest sensation in the area where I live, in Silicon Valley, south of San Francisco, where the giant companies like Facebook, Apple, are located, including Google. And there is this startup investor called Jason Calacanis who proposed to have learning pods, and that is micro schools alternative to online education. So what he's proposing is to hire the best 4th to 6th grade teacher in the local community and provide this person with a 1-year contract to simply teach 2 to 7 students in his backyard, in his garden, in the back of his house, in an outdoor setting, in an informal way. And especially now with COVID-19 problem, this has gained a lot of popularity. Community-based education initiated by their own community or community members. And this has gained a lot of attention, including investors from Wall Street that is trying to replicate, trying to use this as a proof of concept and a model to be replicated in a large manner in many other communities. Again, this is a very important development, a very innovative and creative way. We don't know the result yet, but at least people are trying to do many creative effort in the field of education. And that ends our part 2 of my keynote presentation about the problem and challenges of inequality in digital competency and virtual technology. And then we're going to have a couple of questions and answer. And we'll continue with part 3 about solution-oriented curricular reform, the imperatives for having tacit knowledge, applying localization, and the pentahelix education paradigm, which will include transdisciplinary curriculum. Thank you very much, and we'll continue with the part 3 later on.